Over the third option for the revised final for digital storytelling. And your third option is to create an app walkthrough. So what this option basically is you're going to tell us in detail and do some showing to us how the app actually would work if you were to design it and make it. You can complete this option completely analog. You can do this with a pen and paper, some markers, whatever you have to hand, and just take photographs of it if you need to. So this option, it can be done on computer if you want. If you want access to the Adobe Creative Suite and you have a desktop computer that you can access it on, please feel free to let me know and I can get you temporary access until the 31st of May. It doesn't work for the mobile apps though, unfortunately. But if you have a desktop that can run Photoshop, you can make these as screenshots, but you certainly don't have to. You can completely finish this by drawing things out, and if you say you don't even have markers that are different colors, you could note down colors by hand, like this should be blue, this should be teal, this should be like a chrome background. So that way you can kind of make something, you can show what it would look like without having to actually make it. What I would like you to do is to walk us through how the app would work. So again, you're going to have some of the shared deadlines in terms of what's your problem, what the features would be, but in this case, you're actually going to show us those features kind of quote unquote in action. This is often referred to as a wireframe, so you might hear people who do user experience design or user interface design talk about wireframes. This is basically mapping out all of the key interactions that a user has with an app. So you're going to communicate the user journey through the app that you made up. You're going to actually draw us a map of the user journey, and in this case, you're going to walk us through it. So you will also need to submit a map of the user's emotional journey, and you'll need to draw 3 key screens or make mock-ups of 3 key screens to demonstrate the interface. But again, you can draw these by hand like they're storyboards. I want you to keep your ideal user in mind when you're considering the tone of the visuals that you're creating. So when you make those interfaces, it should look different if you're doing a banking app that's going to be, super professional, that, maybe uses like blues and greens and uses like a serif font. Whereas if you're doing something that is like the Tap Tap Abyssrium game, you want that to be like Arctic colors and you want it to be very calming and very soothing and it's cute. If I'm doing Black Desert Mobile, well, that's all about kind of, it's a RPG, and so it's kind of drawing on the history of RPGs, and that you've got certain classes, and, everything's going to look different based on what the app does. So your requirements are going to be the same as in the other options, where you're going to tell me your problem, you're going to highlight some key areas, you're going to complete a persona. You also need to either visually or by writing represent the user journey. You want to make sure that you're noting at least 5 user interactions in your app. So that you're going to submit in your discussion board thread, kind of in lieu of in other areas people are giving me their storyboards or they're giving me an outline. Again, similarly, this is basically an outline for what are the steps in your app that you're going to need to make sure that you hit on. And you're also going to visually communicate, like you did, similar to what you did in week 11 for the emotional journey homework. You want to communicate the user's emotional journey walking through your app. So this should parallel the points that you've noted down in your user journey. But this is specifically talking about the emotional reaction that the user has. And you'll need to complete at least 3 sample screens. So again, you want to make sure that you're showing us what the interface looks like. This could be like a login screen, a main screen, and a settings screen. This could be a landing screen and 2 features. This could be 3 different features. Think about the problem that you're solving. The problem should pretty much dictate what those 3 screens are going to be. And think about the 3 levels of user experience. And again, you can go back to your book to kind of look at its graphic that looks a little bit like a ice cream pop. You've got your visceral level, that's the different colors, the different fonts, the different textures. The behavioral level, what the user physically would do, tap on, swipe, type in into your app. And then the reflective level of the user experience, which is what do they remember later and what did they take away with them? And that's part of why I want you to think about that emotional journey. Where do they start off? Where do they end up? And how do they get from point A to point B? So consider shape and color in terms of how that's going to affect. Obviously, that starts off at the visceral level, but it will also have an impact on the reflective remembering that someone has about your app. If you don't have access to different colored markers, or you don't have access to a computer where you can make an actual screenshot, then you can write notes down about what the colors and textures should be for your app. That's absolutely fine. And a lot of times when people are designing these things, those are, again, they're a bit like storyboards, they're a bit like thumbnails, where people write all these notes down and then somebody else takes them and actually makes the graphic. That's absolutely fine. As long as you can communicate to me what it should look like, as long as I can get a picture in my mind from your writing and your drawing, that's perfect. And I want you to also consider affordance, which is the very last section that we're going to go over. You don't have a homework in that section, but if you are choosing this option, it will be a really important section to look at. So what are you basing those interactions on? Are there ways that a user, if they click the wrong thing, will know that? Maybe that's one of the screens you want to show. So think about all of these things when you're considering it. And again, if you are considering doing this option, you'll have decided that a couple weeks in, and maybe skip ahead and check out affordance early so that you've got a sense of that when you go in. So those are all the requirements for option number 3. And again, if you don't have access to tech outside of just say, not even a smartphone, but a flip phone that can take a photograph, you can totally get this one done. And if you need any help or any guidance along the way, please feel free to ask me or come into the Zoom on either Monday or Wednesday, and we can have a chat about that.